before I give the floor to Alan Gouldish, sorry, I would like to make a short presentation. So Dr. Alan Gouldish is a research associate of the Academy of Athens from the Greek Research Infrastructure Network for the Humanities, the Parthenos Project, and the Apollonis Infrastructure. She is co-head of the Thesaurus Maintenance Working Group of the RIA EU and member of the Curation Committee of the Backbone Thesaurus. She has directed or participated in many research projects focusing on the development of digital resources and research tools, and also on the curation of arts and humanities data collections. She has a PhD in theater studies and also the European Diploma in Cultural Project Management. So, Dr. Helen Gouldish, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Good morning again from Athens, Greece, and from the Greek Infrastructure for Digital Humanities. I'm part of the Academy of Athens research team working for this part, the Dario GR part of the infrastructure, the other part being the CLUNL, and both infrastructures forming the combined Apollonis, which is actually a merge of the two infrastructures, as in most European countries have chosen to merge these two infrastructures so as to achieve synergies. I'm very happy to be here with you to share our work being done in the Thesaurus Maintenance Working Group of the DARIA EU. I've been one of its coordinators the past years, and hopefully we can find some common ground, or as Bruno earlier said, detect possible future collaborations. Before presenting our work, I would like just a small methodological definitions, since the title of this workshop is on control vocabularies, to make sure that we all talk about the same thing here. A thesaurus is a controlled and structured vocabulary in which concepts are represented by terms organized so that the relationships between concepts are made explicit, and preferred terms are accompanied by leading entries for synonyms or quasi-synonyms. Thesauri and control vocabularies must be interoperable and develop a common language that overarches specific thesauri. This is what a metathesaurus does, but can a metathesaurus make thesauri interoperable without altering them? The scheme you're seeing on the slide is a visualization of how our upper backbone thesaurus is working in regard to the local thesauri being maintained by multiple thesauri and control vocabulary institution organizations, or even independent researchers. So, sorry about that. The backbone thesaurus is the research outcome of the work, as I've said, undertaken by the Thesaurus Maintenance Working Group of the DARIA in an effort to design and establish a coherent overarching thesaurus for the humanities, under which specialist thesauri and structured vocabularies used across scholarly communities can be aligned and form a thesaurus federation. The BBT, as we call it for short, is systematically curated by a cross-disciplinary team of experts, editors, coming from organizations participating in the Thesaurus Maintenance Working Group. That is, apart from the Academy of Athens, which I represent, the Foundation for Research and Technology, Hellas, the Deutsches Archäologisches Institut, and the Fédération et Ressources sur l'Antiquité of the Centre National de la Recherche Scientifique. The BBT is a meta-thesaurus for the humanities data, that provides interoperability for local thesauri. It offers top-level concepts, facets, and hierarchies. We'll talk about more about them in a few minutes, that serve as the common ground for thesaurus building. It has a logical, clear, and consistent structure, and it promotes objectivity and interdisciplinarity. It enables cross-disciplinary resource discovery, and it is a multilingual thesaurus, meta-thesaurus, its content being available in 4 languages: English, French, German, and Greek. Coming to the principles and the methodology we followed, the BPD makes use of a small number of top-level concepts that cover the needs of the humanities and arts thesauri. The top-level concepts have been developed, and are being still by adequate abstraction from existing vocabularies the group had access to. The relations between the BPT terms are hierarchical, and of course, major part in is the categorical semantics and the detection of the intentional properties of the concepts that we have defined as facets. These facets are the most general concepts whose properties are inherited by all narrow terms of each facet. The facets are further subdivided into an open number of hierarchies. So far, we have defined 10 facets and 20 hierarchies in the BBT. This is a dynamic process in the making, which of course depends on new terminology coming in and altering and adding possibly the need for new hierarchies or even top terms. Under this small set of concepts and top terms, narrow terms from different thesauri can be effectively subsumed, providing a comprehensive first-level integration of terminologies. Sorry, I don't have, that's why it doesn't work, sorry. Okay. Here, I don't have, I would like to, give me 1 sec. That's better. The BBT versions, I have presentation, I have forgotten to put presentation view. The BBT versions are regularly uploaded to the DARIA-U vocabularies, along with all their connections to local thesauri via the Digital Humanities Center of the Austrian Academy of Sciences. Let's see a bit how it looks in the DARIA vocabs, which is its current status. The 10 facets could not fit into the slide, but still you can see the deeper blue are facets. So in what we see is activities, conceptual objects, geometric extents, and the lighter blue are top terms of hierarchies such as activities, disciplines, human interactions, conceptual objects, and so on and so forth. So the facet is a grouping of concepts of the same inherent category. Facets are the most general concepts whose properties are inherited by all possible hierarchies and narrow terms of each facet. The hierarchy is a group of concepts that are connected by transitive hierarchical relationships. And a top term is a term representing a concept that has no broader concept in the thesaurus. we propose the BBT leaf terms in the thesaurus tree to be used as local thesauri hierarchy top terms. We decided that further narrower term representation is not the scope of this work. Here, I give you an example, not of a top, an hierarchy top term, but a narrower term of two hierarchies under the symbolic objects. That is the information object, which is a narrower term, which has as broader terms the propositional objects and the symbolic objects. Here you can see the definition and all the links of the terminology mapped, subsumed under this term, and on your sorry about that, and on your left hand you can see all possible terminology, specialist terminology, subsumed under the information object. In order to reach to such abstraction and definitions as you see in the scope notes, we had to go through a very strenuous and a process. So the definition of the BBT facet was started by examining existing vocabularies. We analyzed this data using a bottom-up strategy in order to discover the appropriate upper level concept. This research consciously avoided the projection of any preconceived formulation of knowledge onto the material in order to identify the broader fundamental categories that would be applicable across the humanities. The top-level concepts derived from this process, despite being general, can be easily specialized in order to express the particular meaning of the different domains without leading to inconsistencies. This is achieved through the detection of the intentional properties of this concept and the proper application of the ESA relationship. So the initial vocabularies, terminologies that we turned to derived from the DS Humanities Thesaurus, comprising most of the arts and humanities subject fields, as you see here. It is 15. I will just mention, I'll just show you a screenshot of later on. As every discipline, though, has a different terminology, one of the main challenges was to develop a common language. And so the DS Humanities Thesaurus was ideal to the compilation of to give the terminology, the specialist terms to test the facets and the upper level concepts of the backbone thesaurus. The DS Humanities Thesaurus that you're seeing here, I've just put a small section on from epigraphy and how it is visualized, one of the many possibilities that one has. The DS Humanities Thesaurus is maintained by the Academy of Athens, so from my institution, but is the intellectual property and what has been built also by the National and Kapodistrian University of Athens and the Athens School of Fine Arts. It was created as a collaborative effort and is the outcome of an attempt to create multilingual structured thesaurus to use to humanities scholars. It's from A to Z built from following the BBT model, and it has, as you understand, played a crucial role in shaping it. Here you can see the 15 subject fields that I was talking you about. No need to further read them. As you can see, we comprise most humanities subjects and arts, as well as literary studies, theater, performance studies, musicology, archaeology, history, ethnography, and so on and so forth. So, apart from the ROSSIO Humanities Thesaurus, who has been the cradle sparking the methodology that we deployed building the BBT model, the control vocabularies and thesauri, whose concepts have been mapped to the BBT to these days, are, of course, the aforementioned the ROSSIO Humanities Thesaurus, the Deutsches Archäologisches Institut Thesaurus, the Parthenos vocabularies, to you who are acquainted with the work of this mega project that finished during 19, are the vocabularies deriving from the terminology developed during this cluster of infrastructures project. The pactols of the Frontic CNRS, and the language of binding thesaurus. One of the most advanced among this federation of ours regarding to the level of alignment to the BBT is the IDI thesauri. Here in the slide, you can see our colleagues from DI provided us with this slide to showcase how the implementation of the BBT helped them to reduce inconsistencies, redundancies, and repetitions. The IDI thesauri, an overarching thesaurus, of course, of the German Archaeological Institute. Its goal is to create the control vocabulary that represents all areas of archaeological research, and with that providing an access point to all projects and standardized modules of the Institute. The project is based on the 4 different archaeological thesauri from 4 different libraries within the Institute. So it's a major task. And coming to the other big integration process regarding the pactols of the Frontic. Here, our colleagues from Frontic have provided us a slide showing the integration of BBT upper terms, facets and hierarchies into OpenTESO, their alignment tool, in order to restructure from the start the thesaurus that they have been building since the mid-80s. It is a multilingual and open repository, the pactols about archaeology from prehistory to the present, but also for the classics. It is organized into 6 microthesauri: peoples, anthroponyms, chronology, toponymies, works, places, and subjects. Of course, to support the collaborative and gradually expanding top-level metathesaurus that I'm presenting you, it has been necessary to have the tools to curate and evolve the standard, adjusting it to an objective and cooperative manner to accommodate new areas of research and thought, of course. This is done in our case via BBTalk, an online service tool designed by Forth to support collaborative interdisciplinary development and extension of thesauri. In the slide, you can see the connections, the connected term, the BBT term, the submitter, and the connections made. It has been a tool that has helped us really very much in curating and connecting the different Tesari that wanted to join the BBT Federation. And here you can see also the, in case you want to test it and to see more on that, the URL. So, to summarize, if you're working in an institute, such as myself and most of you, or a research institute, a university, a research team, you hold documents and research data about these documents or people or artifacts. And you most probably have two documents or other objects with the same content and you don't know about it. So you have to deal with this problem. You also need to combine all different terminology and different logics that might have been applied over the years of the same thing to make sure that to make sense of it all, you need a meta thesaurus that allows the one logic to talk to the other logic and find out what you might have in overlap. So what BBT offers is these top-level concepts, facets, and hierarchies I've been talking about that should serve as a common ground for generic thesaurus building. The technique adopted of faceted classification is considered, moreover, valid and consistent. It is considered, valid and consistent form of cross-disciplinary perspective. A major advantage of this model, of this approach, is the potential expansion of the BBT into new scientific domains in a sustainable and manageable fashion. And of course, adopting this model in any case doesn't mean that we require domain experts to abandon their specialized terminology. On the other hand, the core feature of the BBT is that it promotes alignment of cutting-edge terminology to well-formed general terms of the metathesaurus. So I will stop here and wait for your remarks and questions if you have any, and hopefully we can discuss more on during the remaining minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alan Gulish, for your presentation. So does anyone have any questions? You can ask them now. No? Well, I have some comments to make. So first
I must
of all,
assume I was overwhelming.
Yes, it seems so. Well, perhaps people are still writing in the chat.
Yeah. Okay. I haven't checked that.
Happens, but now it doesn't seem so. But in any case, I would like to congratulate your work and that of your team and the Thesaurus Maintenance Working Group and the committee that maintains or curates the BBT. I think that this is a wonderful idea because, well, in the more vast domain of knowledge organization systems, there are top-level ontologies and so on. But as far as I know, there haven't been any top-level thesauri until now. So I think that this is a great idea, actually. And I hope that it has many success going forward, that it is reused in many projects. I was wondering if you had any contact from outside of the scope of arts and humanities for working or contributing to the BBT, because it seems like a very broad vocabulary that may have applications beyond arts and humanities.
That's true. We have trying to map biology or environmental theory in order to check our concepts, and in an aspiration to go on to areas of knowledge beyond our own respective specialized subject fields. And we have been working on these categories because you couldn't see, but if you try to enter the URL I gave you, you will see that we have, for example, living organisms, that it comes from biology, chemistry, or whatever, intentional destructions, genesis, for example, that come from geology. And we have tested all this, and we have added these facets and top terms, examining vocabularies that come from also natural sciences, and apart from our specialized thesauri in the fields of arts and humanities. So yes, we are open. Of course, the Academy of Athens team is specialized, is focused on the arts and humanities, but the Academy as a whole is not. We have astronomy, mathematics, research institutes in molecular biology, and so on and so forth. So possibly, since it's a huge organization, possibly this effort that started with the Ars Humanities Thesaurus, the Academy, the University of Athens, and the Arts School of Fine Arts started, and now comprises terms of 1,500 terms, could be expanded, and the BBT would like to join other medical, biological, or natural sciences oriented thesauri. For the time being, we have checked that, but we have mainly been orientated to as a method to test the model. We have mainly been orientated in the arts and humanities, but it's an open process, and it's how to say, it's very interesting to see the affinity of the meaning. For example, if you example migration in terms of human activity, then that you would have data migration, and then you from the informatics side, and then you would have in physics and in medicine a term describing a specific process. So this polysemy, which is dealt in a very explicit way, allows us to retrieve information and definitions from all three very different subjects, as information science, as medical sciences, and as social sciences, as migration, as a process of human activity. So you see, this interdisciplinarity is very well served, and we would not exclude the other sciences, but still we started from the arts and humanities because there was a lot of input from the beginning, and now we're expanding, and we'll see who is interested. I just gave you an example of how we work with very different terminologies that we find and we have to define.
Thank you. I was wondering also if is anybody working on, do you have anybody from Portugal working or contributing to the BBT? As far as I know, there are.
Unfortunately not.
No, sure.
And
So,
I would be very, we would be very interested to establish collaboration as long as there's work on controlled vocabularies, and perhaps it would be a great idea if you could join us in the Thesaurus Maintenance Working Group meeting to be held by the Daria EU meeting, but it's this year it is organized not in the same week of the main event, but in every Thursday, I think, every week of November, October and November, the working groups are holding, unfortunately, still virtually, their working group meetings that pro-COVID were organized live in the framework of the annual event. And you could join us by presenting a small sample of your work and join us more actively, or suggest someone who's interested in the work. If you enter the URIs, see what we've done, and you see that there's something that you're interested, we would be happy to establish a communication and possibly start a new project and dialogue, and you could make a small presentation. We are focusing on thesauri and structured and controlled vocabulary maintainers within Daria. So I will send an open invitation to you and the other organizers. I see in the organizing committee, and you might suggest who has worked and is interested in the work, and we could participate with a small presentation. I'm not saying
much. We will surely be interested in doing so. I see that we have a question from Jean-Pierre Girard. So,
yes, many thanks for your presentation. I noticed that in the Dias Thesaurus, which is under the BBT, if I well understood, you included many very specific concepts, and I would be interested to know your opinion about the correct way to link the BBT, that is very meta thesaurus, and the very specific concepts like those that you included in the Dias. Where is the limit between the two, and where, in your opinion, do we have to stop in order not to become too precise, too low in the hierarchy?
Well, I've been talking with that a lot with Reinhard Forsch, the information technology manager of DAI, and they have undertaken a huge task to align in a very deep level. The slide I have showed you is that from this process. It really depends, to answer your question, on the purpose of the alignment. The purpose of terminology's alignment is to integrate knowledge, to support the communication among the individuals, and of course teams and communities coming from different scientific and cultural fields. To integrate different terminologies under one target terminology used as a core terminology is like a knowledge aggregator. The core terminology gets extended with new specialized terms. So you expand, you empower searching capabilities in a semantic network. The users of different terminologies are enabled to make queries using the common target terminology, and so on and so forth. So to what extent you align It's really up to you. I think that we should, and we have decided so far, until now, we had decided to keep the backbone thesaurus in a two-level upper schema, that is facets and top terms of hierarchies. In the last creation committee meeting, we decided to build a third layer because we could not produce a new hierarchy which came out from languages. We wanted to create an hierarchy concerning languages, natural languages, technical languages, and so on and so forth. And then a linguist came and said, yes, guys, but you see, you're talking about information systems, and that's one layer above languages. And information systems are not, languages is not the only way that people communicate. So under this astonishing, self-evident but astonishing realization, we came up to the conclusion that we had to create a third layer. But still, what we advise is that local thesauri maintainers keep the top terms of their hierarchies in a node that they find that they can align. Now, if you the full implement in a fully fledged thesaurus, the alignment is a huge task. But then you have again DAI saying that this work that they have been doing has helped them to merge and to better exploit the terminology produced over 100 years of excavations and research activities from 4 institutes, 4 libraries, and activities throughout all over the world. So they have decided to go deeper. I think that if you get in the model and you see that it helps you find redundancies or inconsistencies, then you might need to use more extended alignment. But still, even if you join the federation via a node and in the upper term, you can still rejoice from the benefits of retrieval and being part of a community of thesauri maintainers. So it's, I would say that it is, it has to do with the policy of the institution, of the research institution, and how far you want to get. My friend Blandine Nouvelle from the Frontics NRS has issued an article about how they started working with the BBT, which is named Deconstructing for Reconstructing. They had Pactol's thesaurus that has been built over 30 years and more, and now they have decided that the BBT has helped them to relaunch the Pactols in a new way and detect these redundancies, these omissions, and to view it in a new way. So I don't know how I answered the question, but I think the title of blending is explicit. I mean, it is a hard work if you want to do it in a full alignment, but once you start, you start viewing your own terminology that happened to us in a different way. Our micro local thesauri we changed the view that we saw the terminology, our terminology, our domain terminology. So it's a matter of policy, institutional policy, of long-term work, but you can start by applying the 2 levels and connecting with the 2 nodes, and then if you think that it gives you some solutions, you can go further down. But for the time being, we have recently taken the decision to have a third layer.
Thank you very much,
Yeah.
Ellen Gulbenkian. I'm sorry, but we are running out of
Yes,
time.
I'm sure I've been talking too much. I'm sorry, but
thank you very much for your presentation. We can talk later on more if you'd like. So now I call to the floor our next speaker, Professor Moreira Gonzalez. You have the floor.
Buenos días. Agradezco sinceramente a la Fundación Calouste Gulbenkian, representada por Filipa Medeiros, así como al CLUNL de la Universidad Nova de Lisboa, representado por Bruno Almeida, por organizar esta reunión que posibilita que estemos juntos. Es bastante ambicioso lo que me gustaría trasladarles y voy a partir de un marco establecido del estudio del mundo, que es el marco que acabó en el positivismo para representar la información a través de términos con categorías universales que fuesen entendidas por todo el mundo, con el predominio de relaciones jerárquicas, que sin duda ha sido siempre el eje de la representación de la información desde la antigüedad primera hasta continúa hoy día como vertebración de cualquier tipo de vocabulario. Lo que se buscaba en el mundo científico entonces era la comunicación inequívoca, que un término solo significase un concepto, una idea. Lógicamente, el léxico era visto como nombres que definían y que separaban, diferenciaban mejor los conceptos, y ese léxico se organizaba en listas o en clases por jerarquías en lo que hoy día llamamos taxonomías. Se buscaba la precisión y la objetividad de los términos y era un modelo de ciencias formalizadas hasta el punto de que las humanidades y en gran parte las ciencias sociales se consideraban discursos imperfectos. Discursos que se hacían en torno a los sustantivos como formas de representación prioritaria. El marco actual se deriva pues, de finales de los años 90 con la llegada de Internet, la apertura de las comunicaciones hasta facilitarse como nunca habían sido antes en la historia de la humanidad, y el vocabulario pasa a considerarse primero desde su función comunicativa y luego desborda el concepto de vocabulario, porque el sujeto de interpretación es el usuario, y el usuario ahora ya no es científico, puede ser cualquier ciudadano. De tal manera que también en esta comunicación de información, pero también podríamos decir de conocimiento e incluso de hechos de la vida diaria, se relativiza todo por la situación del discurso. Y es un momento que esto ya se había dado desde la aparición de la ciencia de la información en los años 60, en que las relaciones asociativas pasan a tener más importancia porque la manera de pensar, la manera de discurrir humana es más asociativa que jerárquica. El léxico está próximo al lenguaje natural mucho más que en los vocabularios de carácter jerárquico, y se desborda aquellos límites por los que el sustantivo era la única manera de representar la información en los vocabularios, y se empieza a admitir la riqueza expresiva del lenguaje, especialmente los verbos y los adjetivos. Vamos a ver si llegamos hasta allí. Según el léxico utilizado y las relaciones que se dan entre los términos, aparecen todas estas posibilidades de sistemas de organización del conocimiento, aunque yo me voy a centrar sobre todo en las taxonomías, que partiendo de ser la representación quizá más actual de las categorizaciones y clasificaciones, sin embargo, se va convergiendo cada día más, se va extendiendo cada día más hacia los siguientes grupos de vocabularios, aquellos basados en asociaciones, como los tesauros de los que nos acaba de hablar la profesora Ellen, o decía antes de la interrupción que las taxonomías representan la organización jerárquica y que es un nombre rejuvenecido que fue lanzado precisamente por los científicos positivistas para clasificar por taxones, que era la manera de organizar cualquier área o cualquier tipo de conocimientos mediante jerarquías y clases. Al llegar a Internet, la organización informática de objetos, entre los que se incluyen los términos, pero tenemos que olvidarnos un poquito de que los sistemas de organización del conocimiento solo organizan conceptos, términos o palabras. Y se pasa a objetos quizá también por el influjo, cosas de las ontologías. Y se viene a categorizar en las taxonomías objetos de contenido por derivación semántica. ¿Y cuál es la ventaja que tienen las taxonomías para que nos refiramos a ellas ahora de manera tan específica? Pues que están presentes en los diferentes SOC, están en los esquemas de metadatos, están en los vocabularios controlados, están en los modelos de conceptos y sobre todo en los topic más ontologías, que vienen a ser la misma cosa, de acuerdo con las tres normativas a las que me voy a referir en algún momento, la Z3919 del 2005, las BS del 2005 que fue reformulada en el 2007 y sobre todo la norma ISO del 2011. Bien, las taxonomías describen un modelo de conceptos en un campo semántico que puede ser muy amplio, muy reducido, puede ser científico, académico o puede ser de la vida diaria, entre ellas sobre todo de las vidas en la gestión empresarial y sobre todo en el comercio electrónico, y por eso atienden a los vocabularios particulares de una institución que no cuente con tesauros ni con clasificaciones, de tal manera que se adapta muy bien, por ejemplo, a un escritorio, a un bufete, a un despacho de abogados, para diferenciar su manera de enfrentar los problemas que atiende un despacho de abogados, diferenciándose de otro despacho de abogados. Y conectan la experiencia y el conocimiento del personal propio de cada institución. En ese despacho de abogados, cuando se va a jubilar un abogado, puede dejar en una taxonomía su conocimiento personal para que se aproveche de ello los que continúen en el despacho y quienes vayan a aplicar la experiencia a la manera de enfocar, por ejemplo, un juicio desde la línea marcada por ese despacho de abogados. Organizan las taxonomías los contenidos propios, por tanto, del mundo académico, pero también los de las empresas o instituciones y además todos sus servicios, los productos, y los productos pueden ser, en el campo arqueológico de Mértola, los objetos extraídos que conformarían un museo o una colección o que se acumularían en miles de cajas hasta que se pudiesen identificar mejor, y esos son productos de investigación, y también los recursos humanos de las instituciones, de las empresas. Por tanto, que las taxonomías van mucho más allá del conocimiento de los datos y de la información. La ventaja que tiene una estructura taxonómica, y por eso están triunfando tanto, es porque se expansiona por niveles intermedios la jerarquía y cada vez esta expansión ofrece más posibilidades. ¿Por qué? Porque en un principio se diseñaban solo taxonomías jerárquicas. Sin embargo, ahora se están diseñando más taxonomías facetadas. ¿Por qué? Porque estas taxonomías facetadas no se limitan a ordenar y encontrar los objetos siguiendo los niveles de jerarquía o rastreando sus características y relaciones. Se destinan a unas necesidades probables. Desde que estas necesidades se quiere establecer una experiencia de usuario que sea útil. Decíamos antes que los usuarios son los que marcan ahora la organización del conocimiento, por así decirlo. Ofrecen la posibilidad de integrar facetas comunes con otras individualizadas. Y aquí viene un problema. Las facetas comunes serían coincidentes su aplicación para muchos sistemas de información. Sin embargo, al hacerse una combinación entre facetas comunes e individualizadas, el problema es que limita mucho la aplicación suya, en especial cuando se utiliza en ciencia. ¿Por qué? Porque las facetas se adaptan a un ramo, a una misión, a una sección, a un tipo de objetos, a los servicios prestados, de tal manera que se diseñan a medida. Y al diseñarse a medida, su reutilización es muy complicada. La parte común sí se podría reutilizar, pero la parte específica sería casi imposible porque cada empresa tiene una línea de negocio, e incluso también en investigación, lo que diferencia a un laboratorio de investigación, a una unidad de investigación de otras, es que precisamente tienen líneas diferentes de investigar. Cuando se representa el conocimiento, hay dos líneas básicas derivadas de los dos tipos de web. Una línea que es la de las taxonomías para la web social, que intenta hacer navegables las grandes colecciones, pero que no dispone de una inversión, no dispone de una garantía de apoyo económico y que por tanto se hace de manera libre, que es una ventaja, pero que esta manera libre, sin embargo, luego genera, al ser de bajo coste el tratamiento, dificultades para recuperar desde una perspectiva científica. Entonces, las plataformas de comercio electrónico, la información sobre el contenido de sus productos tiene también este origen, el origen de una taxonomía con estructura arborescente, donde se entra de alguna manera por términos o denominaciones controladas, o el de las etiquetas de una folsonomía que se utilizan de forma libre. De tal manera que últimamente parece razonable hablar de un modelo híbrido que va incorporando la información de las taxonomías y de las folsonomías con el fin de mejorar las buenas pautas del comercio electrónico. En esta convergencia de taxonomías y folsonomías ha aparecido, apoyado por los enfoques computacionales, ofrecer formas que mejoran los defectos que tienen las folsonomías, y ya empieza a haber colecciones generadas por usuarios que aplican una alternativa centrada en el juicio humano, en el discernimiento, que produce folsonomías estructuradas. Este enfoque presenta en realidad un nuevo objeto de estudio. Si se quiere, son un nuevo SOC, donde el sistema de organización del conocimiento, donde el conocimiento representa una respuesta a esa tensión que existe entre la capacidad de mejorar la disponibilidad y su comportamiento cuando los usuarios y también las empresas demandan más recursos, y el valor del criterio humano. también las taxonomías y los tesauros se están acercando. Ambos dependen de las normas, es decir, el apego de las taxonomías y de los tesauros a los fijados en las normas de las que hablé antes es evidente y se rigen por las mismas normas, porque en definitiva las taxonomías son como mínimo una parte de los tesauros. Lo que pasa es que las taxonomías cada vez se acercan más a los tesauros. El impulso de esta aproximación viene de la norma que fijó la interoperabilidad entre los sistemas de organización del conocimiento el año 2013, que fue la ISO 25964-2. Y su mayor apoyo técnico, tecnológico, son las directrices y recomendaciones del W3C, así como, sobre todo, SCOS, que favorecen la interoperabilidad, el intercambio y la puesta común de vocabularios. En especial, dentro de SCOS, la expresión en tripletas del conocimiento. Espero llegar hasta aquí. También a SCOS se debe la transición de los términos a los conceptos. Por tanto, hasta Google, hasta no hace mucho, hasta hace unos 10 años, buscaba por cadenas de texto. Los términos para Google eran cadenas de texto. Mientras que los conceptos, a través de SCOS, se pueden aprovechar la ventaja que ofrece las etiquetas que asignan, por ejemplo, en las taxonomías los usuarios y transformar esas etiquetas, cuando agrupas todas, en anillos de sinónimos y, por tanto, que esas etiquetas determinen los conceptos por la superficie, entonces por la expresión o, si se quiere, por el significante. La convergencia de las taxonomías con los tesauros, pues, se da desde la posibilidad de ambos de reutilizar partes suyas, de compartirlas y de enlazarlas, para lo que se necesita que estén expresados en RDF. Los programas informáticos de gestión informática acogen lo mismo a una taxonomía que a un tesauro. De ahí que en esta convergencia las taxonomías van a coger lo mejor de los tesauros, en el sentido de que los tesauros son los lenguajes, los vocabularios terminológicos más establecidos, y además de la organización jerárquica y categorizada, las taxonomías empiezan a tener relaciones asociativas. Si se quiere, relaciones asociativas más escasas, menores que en los tesauros, que además se prolongan a las ontologías, porque el eje del tesauro y el eje de la ontología es una taxonomía, en el sentido de que es la organización jerárquica y categorizada de los elementos que componen el tesauro o la ontología. Aquí, además, la diferenciación mayor que se va a hacer es la aplicación de las funciones de visualización en las taxonomías, mientras que los tesauros siguen más centrados en vocabularios. ¿Qué quiero decir con diferenciación por funciones de visualización? Porque las taxonomías, como tienen una misión muchas veces abierta, la mayor parte de las veces abierta a todos los que forman parte de una entidad o institución, y absolutamente abierta cuando es una taxonomía de comercio electrónico, ahí la visualización de los objetos de contenido tiene que ser inmediata para que los usuarios, en este caso clientes, puedan llegar dentro de la taxonomía e identificar cuál es el objeto que quieren comprar y la diferencia que tiene ese objeto con otros similares dentro de la taxonomía. Aquí también se da, a través de las taxonomías facetadas, El uso de adjetivos como términos. Vamos a ver, los tesauros tradicionales, desde la perspectiva de vocabulario terminológico, limitaban sus elementos a sustantivos. Por tanto, no podían contener verbos ni adjetivos, entendamos que adjetivos no en los sustantivos compuestos, pero no podían tener verbos ni adjetivos como entidades únicas de recuperación. Del mismo modo sucedía al principio en las taxonomías, pero desde hace ya más de 10 años. Las taxonomías facetadas para determinados tipos de atributos o características de los objetos de contenido se han vuelto más flexibles y aplicativas que los tesauros. Al determinar las diferencias de las características o atributos de los productos con adjetivos descriptivos. Por ejemplo, si es una taxonomía que vende coches, cuando llegas a un modelo con una determinada motorización, etc., llega el color y en el color del coche acepta rojo, acepta blanco. Lo mismo con el tamaño, con el estilo, con el estado. Supongamos que es una taxonomía de venta de coches de segunda mano. Te dice qué estado tiene ese coche, si está muy deteriorado, si está todo muy nuevo, excepto una parte del coche, no sé, los asientos, etc. Sin embargo, claro, hay que hacer este uso de adjetivos con un enorme cuidado. Hay que separarlos en facetas propias de los demás términos de la taxonomía. No, tienen que ser pocos, es decir, la faceta que a su vez también es jerárquica, tienen que ser pocas, en especial las que utilizan adjetivos para nombrar. Y siempre desde la perspectiva de uso que se da en el etiquetado. No van a ser nunca las facetas las que generen el árbol, las ramas principales del tronco y las ramas principales del árbol taxonómico. También hay una cierta convergencia entre las taxonomías y las ontologías, de tal manera que hoy, al personalizarse los atributos y las propiedades de las clases de la taxonomía, sus relaciones semánticas pueden abrirse a formar una pequeña ontología. Por tanto, se vuelve la taxonomía con esa capa semántica una ontología sencilla. Quizá la palabra ontología sencilla también habría que aplicársela a la taxonomía cuando es sobre todo una taxonomía económica, de carácter económico y de carácter comercial. El interés por las ontologías va en aumento, pues se emplean cada vez más, no solo para dar esta capa semántica a la ontología, si se quiere, a los términos de la ontología, de la taxonomía, sino que también se emplea cada vez más como base de los grafos del conocimiento, los topic maps, que en definitiva es una ontología. Los grafos del conocimiento, que es la manera de visualizar en pantalla con menos términos, pero más elementos gráficos visuales, el acceso a los enlaces, si se quiere, el acceso a las unidades de las taxonomías. Los tesauros ya eran modelos de conceptos desde la norma, sobre todo ISO de 2011, en el sentido de que la interoperabilidad para los componentes en este caso de tesauros, pero también de otros sistemas de organización del conocimiento, de intercambiar información y de usar la información que se ha intercambiado, que estamos hablando de reutilización de términos de un tesauro en otro y de reutilización de esquemas de un tesauro en otro. Generalmente, dentro de campos semánticos determinados, concretos, los esquemas del tesauro, de la taxonomía y los términos genéricos se reutilizan mejor que los términos específicos y que los objetos muy específicos, porque son los diferenciativos. Y en esa reutilización, pero sobre todo también en la manera de cómo los usuarios llegan porque los tesauros, hasta que llegan estas normas, los tesauros eran un libro que solo entendían los especialistas de un campo semántico. Cuando digo un libro, porque se editaban en papel. Entonces, si la recuperación se hace en pantallas y los usuarios de los sistemas de organización del conocimiento no son solo científicos, hay que abrir a otros usuarios, y ese abrir los usuarios significa abrir a pantallas, y por tanto hay que visualizar los índices, hay que visualizar los términos y hay que visualizar las definiciones, y esos índices...
Peço desculpa por interromper, professor Moreira, estamos a ficar sem tempo. Podia concluir a sua apresentação, por favor?
Vou rápido para avanzar ao máis... Bom, sí. Esas redes semánticas identifican nodos con objetos y con objetos, y desde un objeto se puede representar personas, hechos, acciones, conceptos y atributos o características de objetos. Este hecho significa que en el momento de usar visualizaciones, los tesauros también amplían las relaciones de asociación y empiezan a utilizar descriptores verbales. Esto proviene del mundo de la educación, donde la unión entre el sujeto y el predicado sería con un verbo. Entonces, en el tesauro semántico, el concepto se relacionaría con otro concepto por relación. Y esta relación es verbal, hasta el punto de que el nodo agente es un sustantivo, el nodo objeto es otro sustantivo, y la relación entre un nodo y otro es un verbo. En este caso, el verbo comer. Fedra come fresas. Y esta relación, que determina una asociación, es tan grande entre un sustantivo agente y un sustantivo objeto como verbos pueden unir a Fedra y a fresas. Es decir, cultiva, compra, vende, muele, empaqueta, envía, etc. De tal manera que las relaciones semánticas se han ampliado de tal forma que era impensable. Esto lo han tomado, este modelo, los grafos de RDF. La estructura de las sentencias en RDF son triples de relación sujeto-predicado. Un grafo representa que los sujetos y los objetos, los nodos, se relacionan a través de propiedades o predicados de arcos, de tal manera que se da la triple expresión sujeto-predicado-objeto, donde el grafo es unidireccional. El sujeto va al predicado y del predicado al objeto, y de aquí salen las tripletas que forman la base de la organización informática de los sistemas de representación del conocimiento. Termino. No, me voy aquí. Es la última. Se ha pasado, en definitiva, aunque con las prisas y con los nervios, me perdonáis, de que no era capaz de ampliar la proyección de los slides. Se ha pasado de los lenguajes documentales a vocabularios y esquemas semánticos, donde la situación es totalmente diferente. Desde una perspectiva de un profesor de ciencia de la información, aquí tanto los profesionales como los investigadores hablábamos de lenguajes documentales. Aquí se abre especialmente a la intervención siempre de los que representan objetos en informática, y que son muchas veces quienes ahora abren las perspectivas de la gestión a través de ordenadores, de ontologías, de topic maps y desde luego de taxonomías. Y a veces nosotros nos quedamos un poco fuera, de tal manera que necesitamos, para no quedarnos fuera, de grupos de investigadores donde haya incluidas personas que sean especialistas en informática o que sean de ciencias de la información, pero muy avanzados en TICs. Se pasa, por tanto, de términos a conceptos, se pasa de términos exclusivamente sustantivos a verbos y a representaciones por adjetivos también. De la univocidad exclusiva de un término se aceptan todos los significantes y expresiones de un concepto, de tal manera que ya funciona así Google, que cuando tú haces una pregunta tiene un enorme diccionario de sinónimos que responde por todas las búsquedas por superficie, que ese concepto está llamado en esas expresiones superficiales, de una estructura estática que eran los tesauros, por ejemplo, o las taxonomías, se pasa a una estructura dinámica, de una representación plana a una representación en red, de la intermediación humana a una situación contextual, de la aplicación limitada a una aplicación enlazada y de la ordenación por categoría a expansión por asociaciones. Y de la limitación a la expresión léxica a la desambiguación por esquemas formales. Me perdonen que me haya pasado un poquito de tiempo, se debió a aquella incapacidad mía para encontrar el botón donde enseñarles, mostrarles la totalidad de la pantalla.
Thank you very much.
Sí.
Muito obrigado, professor Moreira Gonzalez.
Vocês.
So we are going to take a short break. I suggest that we get back here for the next presentation at 11:20. Is that okay with you, Professor Rute, Filipa, and Medeiros?
Yes, 11:20.
Okay,
It's fine.
So see you then.
See you then.
So good morning again, everyone. So I will start my presentation in this workshop. My name is Bruno Almeida, as you already know. I am a research fellow at ROSSIO Infrastructure, Social Sciences, Arts and Humanities. And I'm also an integrated member of the Linguistics Center of Nova University of Lisbon. My field is linguistics and terminology. I have a PhD in this field and also in information and communication sciences through a dual degree program at Nova University of Lisbon and Communauté Université Grenoble-Alpes. And my research interests include terminology, knowledge organization, and linguistic linked data. So here are the topics that I'll be covering today. I will start with a brief presentation of ROSSIO, its members and content providers. Afterwards, I will present the open source applications that make up the vocabulary services at ROSSIO, and also the vocabularies that we are actively developing right now for the platform. Finally, I will show an example of how these vocabularies can be used for metadata enrichment in the context of linked open data. So ROSSIO Infrastructure, Social Sciences, Arts and Humanities is a research infrastructure coordinated by the School of Social Sciences and Humanities of the Nova University of Lisbon. It integrates a consortium with 6 other cultural heritage institutions from Portugal, the Lisbon Municipal Archive, the Portuguese Film Archive, the Calouste Gulbenkian Arts Library and Archives, the National Theatre Dona Maria II, the Directorate General for Cultural Heritage, and the Directorate General for Books, Archives, and Libraries, which besides providing access to its archival collections, also hosts the technological infrastructure. ROSSIO also includes content providers such as the Portuguese Web Archive, arquivo.pt, and more recently, the Diplomatic Institute of the Portuguese Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So a platform is being developed for facilitating the discovery of digital collections of consortium members and content providers. The approach that we are following is based on metadata aggregation through a well-known and often used protocol, Open Archives Initiative protocol for metadata harvesting. Our approach also includes metadata normalization and enrichment based on controlled vocabularies modeled in Simple Knowledge Organization System, or SKOS, whose ongoing development and application will be the focal points of today's presentation. The ROSSIO platform will offer several services based on the aggregated datasets, including a discovery portal, a virtual research environment, and digital exhibitions and collections. So ROSSIO, as I mentioned before, includes vocabulary services that are aimed at supporting the platform's development. These services are based on two open source applications, namely Vocbench 3, which is a back office application for developing vocabularies. It is widely used in this domain by European institutions and by very large vocabularies such as AgroVoc, also uses Vocbench for this, and also Skosmos, which allows end users to browse the vocabularies, and also it makes them available or exposes them as linked data for machines on the web. You may access the published vocabularies through the link below that you see here, although it should be noted that the vocabularies are still in active development and there's still a lot of work to be done. So just to give you an idea, this is a view of a window of print screen showing our tool for vocabulary development, Vocbench 3. Here we can manage the projects, the vocabulary, the SKOS vocabulary projects. Vocbench has many other applications, in fact, besides Thesauri and SKOS vocabularies in general. But of course, we are using this tool for this purpose particular. You can see here in this in the left window the hierarchy of concepts from a specific vocabulary, in this case the ROSSIO thesaurus, and on the right side you can see information about the selected concept, in this case the concept of consortia in English, consórcios in Portuguese, with information about the hierarchy, the scheme where this concept is aggregated, and so on. So here you can see Skosmos, which you can access through the link that I made available before. This is, as I mentioned before, our tool for browsing vocabularies and for linked open data access. This is very used by research infrastructures, namely by in the context of the RIA, as we saw in the first presentation by Dr. Alan Gulbenkian. And as you can see, well, there are several options for browsing the vocabularies. You can browse by hierarchy, which is selected here. You can see the concept of revolutions is selected, and then you see information about the concept, such as the broader concept, the narrower concept that there is, in this case, counter-revolutions, information about lexical labels in other languages. In this case, we have English, revolutions, the URI, so the persistent identifier of each concept. You can download the concept in several linked data formats, such as RDF XML, Turtle, and JSON linked data. And very much something that is very much important, you can access concepts from external vocabularies that are linked to this concept. In this case, this concept of revolutions in the ROSSIO thesaurus is linked to the concept of revolutions in the art and architecture thesaurus via an exact match or exact mapping relation. So What are the ROSSIO vocabularies? So they consist of several concept schemes for supporting content discovery, knowledge organization, and metadata enrichment in the ROSSIO platform. At this time, we are developing core vocabularies for topics in social sciences, arts, and humanities, as well as vocabularies specifically for agents, places, and periods. So the vocabulary services, although we are developing these core vocabularies, as I mentioned, they may also host third-party vocabularies for specific functions, such as for language codes or for resource types. This is very common in research infrastructures and similar initiatives. And these vocabularies at this time are also accessible through the link that I mentioned before. So one for language codes, ISO language codes, and another one for resource types. As linked open data, of course, the vocabulary elements, in this case, concepts, are identified by URIs, as I mentioned before, and they must be accessible through the web. The vocabularies also should make use, and they do, of open standards, such as RDF, Sparkle, and SCOSH. They, of course, to qualify as linked data, must contain links to elements of external vocabularies, and also must be available through open licenses, such as the Creative Commons Attribution license, which is very used for this purpose. So with regard to our methodology, it is generally based on international standards, such as the aforementioned ISO 25964-1 for Tesori, which Professor Medeiros mentioned, and also the ISO 1087, which perhaps many of you don't know about this, but it's a standard specifically for terminology science, and defines its meta vocabulary, let's say. Our approach is therefore focused on concepts and concept relations. So we have a conceptual basis, as it were. Concept relations, which can be hierarchical or non-hierarchical or associative. Concepts are in turn designated by terms, which, or in fact, beyond terms, proper nouns, or even more formally, let's say, as they are generally known in SCOSH, lexical labels. So the vocabulary control aspect, of course, is manifested mostly in the form of the designations, which follow a series of conventions for distinguishing between preferred, alternate, and hidden labels. A very important point of our approach is to reuse vocabulary resources, which were generously provided by our partners, such as lists of subject headings, terms, or in development thesauri. Another methodology that we follow is to extract and reuse sections of reference vocabularies, such as the Art and Architecture Thesaurus, which has an excellent linked data infrastructure. It makes this process relatively easy. And so the alignment process to external vocabularies is carried out either manually or semi-automatically, including the use of alignment tools such as Silk Workbench, which is very used for this process. And more formally, as it were, vocabulary modeling is carried out by reusing elements of established ontologies in the linked open data cloud, besides SCOSH. These ontologies that I mentioned include the extension of ISO 25964 for interoperability with SCOSH, which allows to use properties, specific properties such as concept array and other elements, but we are mostly using that concept array. Also the Bipram Ontology, which is the Bibliographic Framework Initiative ontology, which provides a series of classes that we use for concept modeling, as I will show later on. The Getty Vocabulary Program Ontology also has some properties that we reuse, schema.org, and the Geopositioning Ontology for indicating latitude, geographical coordinates, latitude and longitude for places. So this diagram that you see here represents the alignment by means of scourge mapping properties between the ROSSIO vocabularies and external resources. The systematic alignment to external vocabularies is required for qualifying as linked open data. At this time, the vocabularies are aligned with the backbone thesaurus from Zaraya, the Getty Art and Architecture thesaurus, the geonames gazetteer, and the virtual international authority file. Links to other vocabularies are under consideration at this time. So the central vocabulary under development is the ROSSIO thesaurus, which consists of topics in social sciences, arts, and humanities. And these topics correspond generally to what is called in terminology general concepts. So things like animals, cars, and so on, and not this car or this animal in particular, although there are several individuals also. For example, disciplines or domains of knowledge would be considered as individuals. They are also included. It is presently aligned with the BBT and with the Getty AAT. This vocabulary provides subjects for indexing of other vocabularies, so for metadata description of other vocabularies, and also for contents produced within the platform, such as digital exhibitions and collections that are being developed by our team. Also, it provides topics for modeling what is called types of entities, such as types of agents and places and other vocabularies. For example, in ROSSIO places, the individual concept of Portugal is linked to the country's concept in the ROSSIO thesaurus, and we use a property from the Getty Vocabularies ontology in order to do this. Now, ROSSIO agents includes person and organization names, which are modeled through the corresponding Bipram classes, person or organization. The vocabulary is aligned with VIAF, as I mentioned before, and includes at this time all ROSSIO consortium members and data providers, along with other agents for exemplifying metadata enrichment in the platform. ROSSIO places, in turn, includes names of geopolitical entities, buildings, and other landmarks, also individual concepts. It is presently aligned with geonames and the Getty thesaurus of geographical names. Finally, there is a vocabulary in development for historical, geological, cultural, and artistic periods. ROSSIO periods is aligned presently with the Getty AAT, but we are also studying the possibility of linking it to periodo, which you probably have heard of this before. It's the gazetteer or a gazetteer of periods based on scholarly definitions. So as I mentioned before, and just to finish my presentation, the vocabularies will play a role in the enrichment of the aggregated metadata. Here we see an example provided by one of our partner institutions, the National Theatre Dona Maria II. The record that you see here on the left has already been transformed to RDF based on the Europeana data model, or a specific profile of this model. And it shows already links to concepts from the ROSSIO vocabularies. We should note that this enrichment process is still in its early stages. In this example, we see the identifier for the provider, in this case, the National Theatre Dona Maria II, and also for the concept of Portuguese literature. So by means of the ROSSIO vocabularies, The institution is then linked to the corresponding record in VF, while the concept of Portuguese literature is linked to the broader concept of disciplines and the backbone thesaurus. And this illustrates what we saw in the presentation of Alan Goulis of having a meta thesaurus for interoperability between vocabularies. So this is very much what we would like to achieve. This illustrates then how the vocabularies can be used for linking the provided metadata to external reference vocabularies. Thank you for your attention. We now have 10 minutes for questions, comments, or suggestions that you may have. Thank you. So, are there any questions? No? Okay. So, if you have questions later on, you can also write them in the chat. Now I move on to our next speaker, Filipa Medeiros. So she is a librarian at the Art Library and Archives of the Calouste Gulbenkian Foundation. She is a member of the Information Systems and Museums work group of the Portuguese Association of Librarians, Archivists, and Information Professionals. She has a PhD in Information Science and is a researcher in the Interdisciplinary Center for History, Cultures, and Societies of the University of Évora. Her areas of professional and scientific activity include organization and representation of information, information systems and museums, library quality management systems also. So Filipa, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Bruno. Good morning to everyone again. As you know, my name is Filipa, and I'm going to make a presentation on behalf of the Museum Information Systems Working Group, namely of the work we develop in the Terminologies Task Force. We are very excited about this opportunity to share our work with you, and we hope that this workshop will contribute to sharing and developing the issue of controlled vocabularies for knowledge organization in cultural heritage institutions. So today we will talk about how to use controlled lists to organize and manage information, a toolkit for cultural heritage institutions. Our presentation will focus on the following topics. First, who are we? Second, standardization in cultural heritage institutions, what for? Third, requirements for the development of standardization projects. Fourth, controlled lists to organize and manage information, a toolkit in 6 steps. And fifth, prospects for the future. So, who are we? The Terminologies Task Force is composed, as you can see on the picture, of 5 female members who develop their professional and scientific activity in cultural heritage institutions, either as librarians, museum professional, or advisors. We belong to the working group of Portuguese Association of Librarians, Archivists, and Information Professionals called Information Systems in Museum. This group was formed in 2012, and the goals of the Terminology Task Force are create technical tools and documents, provide guidelines for the use of controlled vocabularies, organize seminars and workshops, publish scientific documentation related to the controlled vocabularies, provide dissemination projects related to controlled vocabularies, and create tools in Portuguese language. The groups communicates through a mailing list and the social media, namely the Facebook, and through the association's online journal, Notícia Bate. All technical and scientific production of the working group is available in several platforms, such as Zotero and Zenodo, with emphasis on the translation of international normative documents, for example, Spectrum 5.0, and technical guides like the practical guidelines about controlled vocabularies for the organization and management of cultural heritage. So, what is standardization in cultural heritage institutions for? First, to provide categorization, indexing, and retrieval of information. Second, manage collections data. Third, ensure access to collections by users, internal and external users. And fourth, enable interoperability between similar information systems. In this domain, we start from some basic and framework concepts using as reference the ISO 5127 Information and Documentation Foundation and Vocabulary. Therefore, during this presentation, we will constantly be talking about controlled vocabulary, concept, term, and controlled list or pick list, always according to the spirit of this same standard. Before putting into practice a standardization project, we must define a set of essential elements, in particular goals and scope, dimension coverage, target audience, timeline, data structure, procedures, terminology, human resources, software, evaluation, and maintenance. All this brings us to the core of our presentation, our proposal for building a list of control terms in 6 steps following this toolkit. As we just said, this toolkit is only a proposal, and as such, it is possible to be discussed, adjusted, and developed. For the construction of the toolkit, we followed the guidelines of the Forward Planning Toolkit of the Arts Council England, and naturally the guidelines prescribed in the standards related to the controlled vocabularies, ISO 25964, published between 2011 and 2013, already mentioned by Professor Medeiros and Bruno. Let's see every step of the toolkit in a short form. Currently, we are working in a more extensive version, which we hope to release at the end of this year. So step 1, define the scope. Step 2, select information sources. Step 3, select terms. Step 4, vocabulary standardization. Step 5, use the vocabulary, execute. And step 6, evaluate and review. So, step 1, let's start. Define the scope. 2 actions. Action 1, what data in the information system requires terminological control or controlled vocabularies? For example, objects, designations, forms of incorporation, materials, periods, and artistic styles. Action 2, choose a project manager and create several working groups. That's very important. Step 2, select information sources. Action 1, search, identify, and select controlled vocabularies already existing of the thematic scope of the collection that we are working with. Action 2, approach similar institutions to find out what tools they use, in the case they use them. Action 3, comply with the requirements of the national and international standards, ISO 25964 and ANSI ISO Z3919. Step 3, select terms. Action 1, select terms representative of the existing themes of the collection by each data category. Action 2, create a preview alphabetic list of terms extract from the information sources. Action 3, discuss the first version of the list of terms among the working groups. Step 4, vocabulary standardization. Action 1, compare the select terms with the concepts already existing in natural language in the information system, if they already exist. Action 2, remake the list with the preferred terms to collect from the select controlled vocabularies, the concepts that do not exist in the select controlled vocabularies. These concepts will have to be standardized. Until step 4, action 3, formal standardization, morphology control, language, gender and number, singular and plural forms, syntactic control, structure of the terms, simple compound nouns. Action 4, semantic standardization, ambiguity control, attention to the homographs, use qualifiers or scope notes, synonyms or quasi-synonyms, use hierarchical relationships in this case. Attention, choose the same term to label a particular concept. Step 5, use the vocabulary, execute. Action 1, insert a list of terms in the information system. Action 2, select one sample of records and apply them the list of terms to register and categorize information by category of data. And action 3, create a procedure manual to manage the use of the list of terms, especially for the fields that need controlled language. And finally, step 6, evaluate and review. Action 1, develop some research and retrieval experiences with the records that make up the sample. Action 2, in group, identify inconsistencies and make adjustments, corrections to the controlled list of terms. The project manager will make the necessary corrections to the procedure manual and elect some members of the working groups to permanently monitor the project, update the manual, perform training actions, and project the evolution of the controlled vocabulary. After perhaps the application of the toolkit become clear through the use of a case of study. At this moment, our working group is following the project of standardization of the Calouste Gulbenkian Museum and the Center of Modern Art of the Calouste Gulbenkian Foundation. This is a very, very recent project and we have just started it, but we are very excited. We are certain that will be a very challenging project. That is why we are only in the early stages of the toolkit, as you will see. So, step 1, define the scope. Our scope are the visual and performative arts, namely art of book, ceramics, decorative arts, drawing, furniture, installation, painting, photography, textile, tapestry, sculpture, and video. The working group is composed of members of our working group, 2 curators of both museums, 2 information professionals from the art library and archives, 1 member of the information systems beyond the company that manages the software. The information categories that need controlled language are the agents, forms of incorporation, objects designations, materials, objects by function, production methods, techniques, and colors. In this presentation, we are going to work the category of agents and the materials. Step 2, select information sources. We have chosen the Getty vocabularies that Bruno mentioned before, namely the art and architecture thesaurus, but we have also chosen the nomenclature for museum cataloging, the British Museum object names, and a Portuguese controlled vocabulary, AZ Infinitum, Sistema de Referenciação e Indexação em Azulejos. So, after define the scope and select information sources, we are going to select terms and organize them into an alphabetic list in natural language. For this presentation, we have chosen the group of information agents, and we came to the list with the following terms. Note that this list is just a sample to serve as an example and does not include all the terms relating of this group of information. So we collect ceramicist, glass worker, lacquerer, master glass worker, medalist, metal worker, paper hanger, and textile worker. Step 4, vocabulary standardization. The table shows us the process of vocabulary standardization. In the first column, we observe the terms collect in natural language. Compare them with the terms select from the information sources. 3 situations can happen. The first situation, it's the better one, direct correspondence between the concept in natural language and the preferred term in the controlled vocabulary. The only case in which this happens, as you can see, concerns to the term paper hangers. Second situation, the concept in natural language corresponds to a non-preferred term in the controlled vocabulary. In this case, use the preferred term. The concepts ceramicist, glass worker, and metal worker are an example of this case. The preferred term is in the plural form. Third situation, the concept does not exist in the controlled vocabulary. Add it to the list with indication that derives from the natural language, such is the case of the concept master glass workers. However, in the midterm, our goal is that the list of control terms may evolve into a more complex semantic tool, namely a taxonomy. Let's return to our case study, taking as an example other information category, materials, in particular paper. Sorry, the terms are in Portuguese. In this case, we note that we have some hierarchical relationships established in the information system already. However, we also identify some problems such as the lack of formal and semantic standardization in a general way, such as capital and lowercase letters, repetition of the same concept without using qualifiers or scope notes, math here, sorry, and absence of categorization by any criteria. Starting again from the controlled vocabulary that we took as a reference, the AAT from Getty, the proposal is to reorganize the terms by categories after the vocabulary standardization, as we have done with information of the group agents. So organize the terms by composition or origin, by form, by function, or by production method. And here we get the results, a little taxonomy of paper. Once more, this is just a sample for the presentation. The taxonomy has 4 categories: form, function, production method, and composition. Each category has subcategories comprising specific terms. For instance, the category form has 4 specific terms: China paper, Japanese paper, colored paper. The colored paper has a more specific term, as you see, blue paper. In short, the terms are organized by semantic criteria of generalization, specialization. And finally, the prospects for the future. Develop, test, and adjust the toolkit in several cultural heritage Portuguese institutions. We would like to extend the toolkit to other controlled vocabularies, namely taxonomies and tesouros. Promote this tool at the national and international level through participation in seminars, webinars, and workshops. For organized training actions for the professional community, promoting the sharing of experiences and resources, and finally, continue to translate international reference standards related to knowledge organizations and controlled vocabularies. Thank you so much for your attention. Muito obrigada. Join our working group. You will be welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Filipa. Are there any questions? Remember that you, Jean-Pierre Girard has a question, so go ahead.
Yes. Find in interesting presentation. I would be interested in knowing the way you use, how you manage potential conflicts inside the working groups between the persons in the working groups on one decision or another decision where to place a concept, how to translate it, to choose it or not, and something like that. How do you manage that situations?
As I said, we are just beginning this project. We are only 5 persons in this moment, but sometimes it's very hard. We are just working, but with the time is going, I think that we are going to find a solution, because first of all, we make a meeting between the information professionals, and then we present the terms. It's always easier. And then we discuss them. If not, the situation will become more difficult, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So, are there any more questions for Filipa? Well, I would like to thank you for your presentation. I think that the work that your working group is carrying out is very important in Portugal for fostering and developing more controlled vocabularies in the institutions that require to do so. And I hope that you can carry out your work going forward. So thank you very much for your presentation, Filipa.
Thank you, Bruno. You are welcome.
So perhaps now it's our lunch break. We get back at 2 o'clock here in Portugal for our next presentation. So until then, have a good lunch, everybody, and see you then.